It was just so good to be here, and hard to believe, 25 years have passed since we started this series. I forget which poet it was, but one of them, somebody helped me with this. Some poet said, great poets need great audiences too, and I always say we have the greatest audiences here at the Carriage House. I have a couple of things to say first. One is a message from our mayor, Colleen Marr. She sends her regrets. She really wanted to be here with us tonight, but she said her daytime job got in the way, and she has a committee meeting tonight. She's administrator for, where, Tom?
Somerset County.
Somerset County. So she's a very busy lady, but she has been so supportive of the arts here in Fanwood, and especially of the Carriage House Poetry Series. She's been amazing. And which term is she on now, Tom? Fifth? Which term is she on now?
Five.
Her fifth term. People won't even run against her anymore because she's just so good. She's a truly amazing woman with more energy than I've ever had in my entire life. But anyway, she sends her regrets and wishes she could be here with us, and she's certainly here with us in spirit. And then a little sadder note, many of you may have heard that Paul Sohar passed away. Paul was a regular here. I don't think he ever featured, but he read in our opens, and he was just very much a part of the series, and it was very sad that he passed away. And then Father Alex, who many of you know, he was in all of our shows, and just personally, he was, a very, very close, special friend for 33 years. It was very sudden, and, I'm still kind of trying to get my equilibrium back. But we did make for you a little handout with some of Father's poems. He never read his poems. He always said, I want to be remembered as a good priest, not a poet. But he had some great poems, and some of them were published. So there is a little handout. It's on the table in the back, so please help yourselves. Take a couple if you want to share them with other people that you know who are writers and maybe who knew Father. But anyway, may they both rest in peace. They were good men and good friends. So now I'm going to ask Tom Plant to come up. Tom, as you know, is my sidekick and my best buddy. Oh, and by the way, big thank yous to Patricia Plant, who happens to be Tom's wife, for making the little booklets for us with the, the color picture Father. Tom to please introduce Paul Muldoon, who many of you know about, and we've certainly had publicity all over the place. But anyhow, Tom is the one who made the connection for us. Tom went to hear Paul read when he was at Kane University, and he made the connection and said, gee, we have this little poetry series going on in Fanwood, would you be willing to come? And Paul very graciously said, yeah, sure, get in touch with me. And I did, and he said yes right off the bat, and so here he is. And Tom is going to introduce him for us. So there you go, bud.
Well, thank you, Adele, and you stole all my lines. So, yes, it was several years ago when Paul read at Kane University, and a friend of mine who was organizing that event said, oh, Tom, help me out with the publicity and whatnot. So we helped on that, and Paul and I, we were both early for the event, as I recall, and he sat next to me and we just started gabbing, and I was telling him about my daughter going to school in Belfast, and being familiar with Belfast because we go over routinely now to see her, and so I always felt a kinship, and that led to me telling Adele about this, and so here we are tonight. It's only been a few years later trying to get this thing off the ground, but here we are. And without any further ado, please welcome Paul Muldoon.
And so, when the master was calling the roll at the primary school in College Lands, You were meant to call back Anshaw and raise your hand as your name occurred. Anshaw meaning here and now, all present and correct, was the first word of Irish I spoke. The last name on the ledger belonged to Joseph Mary Plunkett Ward and was followed, as often as not, by silence, knowing looks, a nod and a wink, the master's droll, and where's our little ward of court? I remember the first time he came back, the master had sent him out along the hedges to weigh up for himself and cut a stick with which he would be beaten. After a while, nothing was spoken. He would arrive as a matter of course with an ash plant, a sally rod, or finally the hazel wand he had whittled down to a whiplash. Its twist of red and yellow lacquers, sanded and polished, and altogether so delicately wrought that he had engraved his initials on it. I last met Joseph Mary Plunkett Ward in a pub just over the Irish border. He was living in the open, in a secret camp on the other side of the mountain. He was fighting for Ireland, making things happen. And he told me, Joe Ward, of how he had risen through the ranks to quartermaster, commandant, how every morning at parade his volunteers would call back Anshaw and raise their hands as their names occurred. A poem which I suppose is a kind of bodying out of that great American phrase, what comes around goes around. It's a poem set in the part of Northern Ireland where I was brought up, in northern County Armagh, about halfway across Northern Ireland. And funnily enough, the fellow on whom the poem is substantially based was someone I met over the summer. I haven't seen him for, 60 or 60. Guys, would you mind not using the flash, please? 60 or 65 years. And he's a guy who, on the day his exam results came out for his A-levels, that would have determined whether or not he might go to university. That was the day internment was set up in Northern Ireland. And he decided to take a different route. Insofar as any of us make these decisions in our lives, I wonder very much really about the extent to which we make these decisions at all. If much of it isn't really based on accident and roads that we take for no particular reason. Anyway, it's great to be here. It's great to be able to celebrate your 25th anniversary. I'm going to read a few poems from along the way, a few old ones, a few newish ones. And by the way, if you feel at all that you would like to, since it's comparatively informal occasion, if you feel that you'd like to ask a question or make an observation, please, be comfortable about doing that. So, as you might guess, this part of North Armagh where I was brought up, it was a little Catholic parish. And of course, at the time of the Cuban Missile Crisis, which one or two of you, very few of you I'm pretty sure, one or two of you though might remember, it was a moment at which there was a sense that the end of the world was at hand. And of course what happened then was that all of us joined what was already a pretty substantial line of people who were lined up for the confessional, as they were going to get themselves straight with their makers. And even though there were a few of us, I was probably maybe 10, 11 at the time of the Cuban crisis. I actually hadn't done an awful lot of damage as yet. And so, but even we were forced to go in and tell our sins, confess our sins. I know that you've lost your priest here in recent times. So there is a father who is a priest who's mentioned in this poem, but there's also a father who was my father, based somewhat on him. And I don't know about you, but I thought that the time when we would have been worried about nuclear and atomic warheads was long since gone. But then lots of things haven't quite worked out as we thought they might. So anyway, so there's a poem, I guess, having to do with a situation, a very delicate balance, not between the world powers, perhaps, so much as just on a more modest scale, a young woman's sense of herself in the world and what would have been right to do and what not. Anyway, so it's called Cuba. My eldest sister arrived home that morning in her white muslin evening dress. Who the hell do you think you are? Running out to dances and next to nothing. As though we hadn't enough bother with the world at war, if not at an end. My father was pounding the breakfast table. Those Yankees were touch and go as it was. If you'd heard Patton in Armagh, but this Kennedy's nearly an Irishman, so he's not much better than ourselves. And him with only to say the word. If you've got anything on your mind, maybe you should make your peace with God. I could hear May from beyond the curtain. Bless me, Father, for I have sinned. I told a lie once. I was disobedient once. And Father, a boy touched me once. Tell me, child, was this touch immodest? Did he touch your breast, for example? He brushed against me, Father, very gently. That's it. So this area where I was brought up was an area where there was a lot of political activity, as you might imagine. This is a poem based on a family story having to do with my Uncle Pat. And it has to do with the first roundabout actually the first roundabout or traffic circle in Ireland, which happened to be in Northern Ireland and happened to be very close to where we were brought up. And of course we had never seen a roundabout, needless to say. And I remember lots of our neighbours were working on it, and we were hearing stories of the principle of the roundabout, stories about how it functioned. But of course nothing would do until we'd experienced it for ourselves. And I remember quite vividly driving up to it and kind of driving around it. And now that we'd got the hang of it, driving around it again, somewhat more confidently. I mean, this was an era, I don't know what it was like. Of course, I'm sure Fanwood has always been a kind of, probably a hectic social whirl around here. So, where I was brought up, and when I was brought up, I remember, for example, the first time we went to Dublin Airport, we weren't actually going anywhere. We just went to see what a plane looked like as it took off. It was a very different era. In any case, so the roundabout features in this poem. Also featuring in it are the B specials, who were the first, they were the second division of the Royal Ulster Constabulary, and they were first in many other things, mind you, mostly getting up to mischief. They were disbanded. They were so bad that they were disbanded quite early on in the 1970s. Such was their reputation for causing trouble. The sash my father wore, the great Orange song, followers of Prince William of Orange and Nassau. And the Pope, I think you know. The sightseers. My father and mother, my brother and sister, and I, with Uncle Pat, our dour, best loved uncle, had set out that Sunday afternoon in July in his broken down Ford, not to visit some graveyard. One died of shingles, one of fever, another's knees turned to jelly. But the brand new roundabout at Ballygawley, the first in mid-Ulster. Uncle Pat was telling us how the B specials had stopped him one night somewhere near Ballygawley and smashed his bicycle and made him sing the sash and curse the Pope of Rome. They held a pistol so hard against his forehead, there was still the mark of an O when he got home. So a poem that, in other words, makes this connection between the O of the roundabout and the O of the mark left by the barrel of the pistol. It sounds like a tall tale, but he told it, that story, with conviction. So let me move right over to this part of the world. Well, actually, I'm not sure if you have coy wolves in this part of the world, do you? Have they been spotted down here? Coy dogs? Coy dogs. Now, where I live, I spend a bit of time further up, about 3 hours north of Manhattan, and I'm pretty sure I saw a coy wolf. And if I didn't, I'm going to perpetuate. It's a story I'm going to tell anyway. But certainly, it was a large. I'm looking around to find something that would have been large enough to pretty large, very large. I saw it in broad daylight, and you know, these are animals they're a cross between a coyote and a wolf, and they've come in through. I don't want to blame Canada though. I don't know. I can't. Do you think we're going to go to war with Canada? Well, these fire. Anyway, don't want to blame them, but they seem to be coming in through Canada. In any case, you know, as with many other experiences, and I know a number of your poets, you know, one's trying to figure out what's happening, to make sense of the various experiences we have in our lives. That's one of the things that poetry does, I think. So this is a poem that simply tries to give some sense of what it was like to see this animal. Coy wolves. The sight of one crossing my yard, all copper zinc in broad daylight, is etched on my eye. It's mostly at night though, when they snag a hapless deer, their voices are raised on high. No sooner do they corner a woodchuck or raccoon than their cover of ghost riders in the sky resounds from here to Oregon. The version I myself favour to kick off a road trip is Frankie Lane's of 1963. Others reckon Johnny Cash to be preeminent. Still others heap praise on Elvis Presley and Burl Ives. This midnight mix of yodels and yippee-i-os may derive not from a whole pack, but a single pair. In Alaska, a hunter's been known to set out knives covered in ice blood, on which coy wolves will pare themselves down to the bone. Though this may be no more than a brouhaha over competing claims to a garbage bin that'll set off the neighbour's motion detector camera, we hear it as both a paean of praise from a mission featuring a mosaic of St. Francis and the Wolf, and a muezzin's call to prayer from an unlikely mosque. Frankie Lane did invite me once to co-write a song, but I stupidly declined because I can't read music. Which sounds as if it might be a bit far-fetched, but it's actually true. It's actually true. Guys, please come up to the front. There are a few seats up here. Come ahead, come ahead. You don't want to be standing for this. Life's too short for that.
This is our mayor of whom I spoke earlier.
Good on. How are you? What a pleasure. Nice to see you. Thank you very much for being Sinead, I'm so glad you made it. And,
Me too.
I know that you have many burdens, many things pressing in upon you, so it's great to see you here.
You're welcome.
I'm glad to be here.
Welcome.
You know, I mentioned writing songs. One of the things I'm interested in is trying from time to time to write a song, and as it happens, this next one is a song, perhaps rather than a poem. It's called The Riders. Some sigh for those 9 bean rows. They're the 9 bean rows from W.B. Yeats's poem, The Lake Isle of Innisfree, if you remember that one. Some sigh for those 9 bean rows, some the heavenly abode. Some sigh for the binary, some the binary code. Some load a hermaphrodite brig with a cargo of tin. Some ride with Quanah Parker, some ride against the wind. And those of us who've ridden the white horse in our own expeditionary force now weep that history must run its course. Now weep that history must run its course. Some sigh for the Caffey D'Alsace, some for telling it slant, some sigh for brave Ulysses, some Ulysses S. Grant. Some can't believe that you're for real. I think I've got you sussed. Some ride upon the railroad. For some, it rides on us. And those of us who've ridden the white horse in our own expeditionary force now weep that history must run its course. Some still sigh for Art Blakey, some sigh for how he rode. Some sigh for Acapulco, some Acapulco gold. Some hold a piercing on their tongue, some a burning coal. Some ride in on a donkey, some ride out on a pole. And those of us who've ridden the white horse in our own expeditionary force now weep that history must run its course. Now weep that history must run its course. So you can see that what that's doing is probably something slightly different to what the poems are doing. It really needs a bit of music to make it what it most might be. But in any case, we don't have any music tonight so far.
We were listening to Warren Zevon before,
Were you?
the one that you co-wrote with him.
My ride is here.
My Ride is
Ride's
Here.
here. Yes, do you have a copy of it?
Yeah.
Tom has it.
Yeah, I'll read it for you if you like. Yeah, so the great Warren Zevon, who many of you will recall, if you could get it for me on the phone, please. He died 20 years ago. Early September. I think it was the 5th of September, 20 years ago. It's hard to believe he's gone. Sorry?
It's 20 years.
It's unbelievable. So I met him. I was a huge fan, and as I've done with various people I like a lot, I've written them fan letters. The first fan letter I wrote was to, do you remember Richard Green as Robin Hood?
Yes.
Yes. And, I wrote to him asking him if he had any spare bows and arrows. Which I thought was a reasonable thing to ask. And he wrote back, he said that they needed all the bows and arrows to fight the Sheriff of Nottingham. In any case, so I had to buy my own dough. But in any case, I wrote a fan letter to Warren Zevon and heard back. I didn't really expect to hear from him, but did hear back. And I met him in New York. It wasn't long after 9/11. And which kind of explains some of the imagery in this song, I think. And we were walking around New York, pardon me, and he said, would you think about trying to write a song sometime? And I, of course, said, oh, well, give that, maybe I'll have a go. You know, I was secretly, or perhaps not so secretly, thrilled. So I wrote this song with him. It was an amazing experience. It was like going to learn how, you know, to learn how to write plays with Shakespeare or something. Because he was an extraordinary writer. Did you get a copy of it? Would you mind if I borrowed your phone? You'll never see it again.
You don't want me to sing.
You don't want me to sing either.
That's the lyrics.
Yeah, here we go.
Yeah.
So anyway, this is how it goes. I was staying. Yeah, the only thing he had was the title, and he'd come up with the title from. He'd come up with it as a spontaneous remark one night. He was playing a small club somewhere, and an ambulance went by. And he says, my ride's here. And that's all he had. So as we embarked on it, my ride's here. I was staying at the Marriott with Jesus and John Wayne. I was waiting for a chariot. They were waiting for a train. The sky was full of carrion. I'll take the Mazuma, said Jesus to Marion. That's the 310 to Yuma. My ride's here. The Houston sky was changeless. We galloped through blue bonnets. I was wrestling with an angel. You were working on a sonnet. You said, I believe the seraphim will gather up my pinto and carry us away, Jim, across the San Jacinto. My ride's here. Shelley and Keats were out in the street, and even Lord Byron was leaving for Greece, while back at the Hilton, last but not least, Milton was holding his signs, saying, you bravos had better be ready to fight, or we'll never get out of East Texas tonight. The trail is long, the river is wide, and my ride's here. I was staying at the Weston. I was playing to a draw when in walked Charlton Heston with the tablets of the law. He said, it's still the greatest story. I said, man, I'd like to stay, but I'm bound for glory. I'm on my way. My ride's here. Please, yes, thank you, thank you.
Yeah, that was just amazing. Did he write that during the time that he knew he only had, I guess, a few months to a year to live?
He didn't. He didn't. It was written before his final illness. It was on his second to last album. It was the title track of his second to last album. But you know, he'd always been very interested. He had kind of black humor and kind of, you know, lots of death's heads, skulls. He was a, you know, he was much possessed by death, as it were, you know. And so no, it was before he knew about his final illness.
Really powerful. It's like a Leonard Cohen Tower songs.
Yes.
Maybe, I didn't know he was so involved with the idea of death. I just thought it sounded like the end.
It does, yes, that's
Yeah.
right. And Yeah, it took us a long time to write it. I mean, I actually wrote the first verse of it and sent it to him. It was still the days when I don't think MP3s had been invented. Had they been invented 20 years ago? I don't think so. Maybe they had, I don't know. But I sent it to him and he wrote the music for the rest of it, just the kind of first verse and then the rest of it. Then it took us forever to write the rest of it. The rest of it. You know?
Yeah.
Forever. And it's very hard to write a song, actually. In a strange way, much more difficult than it is to write a poem. But in any case, partly because once you've got the template for the first verse, you've pretty much got to stick with that. You know, it's set down and you pretty much have to stay with it. So that's difficult. Anyway, yes?
Can you say something about working with the Macker? Speaking of writing.
Yes, did you mean Sir Paul McCartney? Yes, I can say a little bit about that. And I had the privilege, for those of you, many of you won't know, of working with Paul McCartney on his book, The Lyrics, which I think 1956 is it, to the present? You think I'd know that? But anyway, from a while back until now. And we spent about 5 years working on it, you know, recording conversations, not constantly, but over a period of 5 years we met probably 25 times.
Wow.
And on each occasion discussed whatever, 4 or 5 songs. There are 154 of them in the book. We actually did we have a paperback of it coming out shortly. There are a few more in it, but in any case, so what happened was the idea was we'd have the text of the song on the left-hand side and then a commentary on the right-hand side. Do you want to sit down up here? So that's what we were working on, was the commentary, which was transcribed and then edited down by myself. And then there were lots of other material put into it as we went along. Now, we thought we were working a pretty basic book, but as it went along, they discovered lots of interesting photographs and, you know, ephemera, as they call it, you know, bits and bobs, menus with lyrics scribbled on them, all that sort of stuff. So anyway, that was what your question was. What was it like? A lot of fun, huge amount of fun. Yes?
Yes, I happen to have a copy of the volume 1 with me.
Do you?
And I'd like you to autograph it maybe.
I would be delighted to do so. I do a very good impersonation
Volume
of.
1 I can.
Of course. So, any other thoughts or just? You know, my rides here, I don't want to get into a bleak vein at all, but I thought I'd read a recent poem called The MRI. Why is that so funny?
It's not funny.
No, but I mean, the other thing is that, you know, but you have to laugh, don't you?
Yes.
Yeah, you kind of have to do
It's an older crowd.
it's an old. I didn't want to say that. The MRI, you know, I've been in the MRI a couple of times. I don't suppose it's anything you really get used to. But actually, you do get a little used to it, unfortunately. Anyway, so there's a poem attempting to describe what it's like to be in it. For those of you who haven't had one, very, you know, tight quarters, very confined space. I mean, I'm somewhat claustrophobic, so it's not a lot of fun in that respect. But I kept thinking of it as a sarcophagus. The word sarcophagus, which I hadn't realised as I embarked on this poem. One of the great things about trying to write poems is that you learn things as you go along. I discovered that, and some of you will know this perhaps, that it means, it has to do with the Greek terms for eating flesh. They thought the sarcophagus ate flesh in some way. So anyway, just to kind of try a description of being in an MRI, but it turned into a kind of description of human history, including, you know, our friends the Neanderthals. I'm sure you've read, I think I must have a dozen books on the Neanderthals. Who've been very, you know, who've really come to the fore over the past 20 years, I'd say, since Warren left us. And it's a poem written in a very particular form, which many of you will recognize as the sestina. And that's the form, as you know, which is perfect for anything that's even remotely, what would one say, amusing, obsessive, an obsessive mulling over, musing upon, which could be almost anything actually. And certainly the case here, where the same 6 words or versions of them are turned over at the ends of the lines. Anyway, I'll give you a blast of it and see what you think. Anu is mentioned here as a goddess. The MRI. Again and again, we put our shoulder to the wheel on which we are broken. Stretched out at the heart of a replica of the stone sarcophagus we once believed to eat flesh, we still have a straight shot at the Strait of Gibraltar, where we first found a shoulder to cry on, long before the flash of an iron-rimmed wheel on a limestone pavement, where we first had a little heart-to-heart, where we first developed our sense of the straight and narrow, through the first stone, first rubbed shoulders with pigment traders, first made a colour wheel, first thought to flush dyes through our own flesh, so as to map what lies within our hearts, first reinvented the wheel that will run straight only with a camber, first gave the cold shoulder to a pigment trader, first chipped away at limestone till it actually looked like stone, first assigned a shoulder flash to the airborne division, first deigned to shoulder the blame for what happened in the heart of Galicia, long before we learned to lie straight as a die, though the planets wheel and wheel about us, before we first secured a lodestone to a merchantman, first entered the home strait where ore is crushed in the flosh, as the heart is oft-times crushed. First, put our shoulder to that great wheel, saw Anu in the flesh, first learned that a stone-faced doctor has the heart to give it to us straight from the shoulder. So in that last little section of it there, only, as you know, all the 6 words or versions of them are appear again. So any other observations or concerns? Complaints? I was going to say you should leave complaints with the mayor, but she has a night off, so no. I live in an old Seabiscuit factory in New York. Sounds weird. But a place where they made hardtack for the long sea voyages. And so I've tried to write a poem about the sea biscuit as a concept, needless to say, the way one does. And it's written, again for what it's worth, in a very particular form called the quatern, with which some of you may be familiar. You know, one of the reasons why we go into the poetry business, many of us, is because we're very lazy people. I'm sure you know that, some of us. And the great thing about this form is that line 1 of verse 1 acts as line 2 of verse 2, and line 3 of, you see where I'm going? Of verse 3, and line 4 of the fourth and final verse. It's only 4 verses long, which is great. And so it's a strange kind of use of it's referred to, I see, in the literature about the quatern, which I can tell you is not very extensive, as a chorus or a refrain, you know. I'm not sure if that's exactly what it is, but that's how they describe it. Anyway, here we go. That a ship's biscuit might yet see us through our circumnavigation of the globe is testimony to its shelf life true. Though your nonchalant doffing a bathrobe makes me think you're also playing for keeps. That a ship's biscuit might yet see us through may be traced back partly to Samuel Pepys and his time in the Navy, partly to our weevil sense. It's easier to chew when first softened behind the lower lip. That a ship's biscuit might yet see us through from the time we weighed anchor at Pike Slip to our pretty much having learned the ropes vindicates our taking the longer view and persisting pretty much in the hope that a ship's biscuit might yet see us through. So that's hard. So, maybe any observations, queries?
Would you read Gathering Mushrooms for us? It's on page 33 in your...
I would. I'll maybe end with that actually, because it's kind of long. Nobody wants to hear that a poem is long. You know, it's a real conversation stopper. But I'd be delighted to read it, and thank you for asking. So, it's a poem. Well, is this? What am I going to say about it?
Page 33.
Thank you. It's on page 33. Where did we go? So my father was a mushroom grower. He grew mushrooms professionally. I smile as I say it because it wasn't really a huge business. What had happened was actually one of our neighbours had been over in Pennsylvania on a little trip and had spent time in the mushroom growing area of Pennsylvania, wherever it is, and I've forgotten exactly where it is, and they came back to Northern Ireland. Did somebody mention where it is?
Yes, Kennett Square.
Exactly. Thank you so much for that, Kenneth.
Pennsylvania.
Yes. So they were. I mean, I don't know if they were. Would you go for your holidays to Kennett Square?
No.
No. Well, however, they found themselves in Kennett Square, maybe they knew people there, and they brought back word of the fabulous opportunities in the mushroom growing business. And before we knew it, everybody was growing mushrooms. Everybody was growing mushrooms. I think I might have been growing them myself. In any case, so that's one part of this. Another part of it, and it has to do with, and please forgive me for bringing this up, but one aspect of it has to do with magic mushrooms, as they're known, the highly illegal and highly dangerous psilocybin, and which we're certainly not. We're certainly not speaking for on this occasion, but I'm telling you that they feature in this poem. Just warning, it's a trigger warning. And I think that's about it. It's set in Belfast. It's set, at a time when there was a great deal of activity, political activity, and the time of the hunger strikes and the dirty protests in Northern Ireland, a very tough time for everybody there. And it's a kind of bleak poem in many ways, but so we have to take the bleak with the upbeat. And perhaps find even in the bleak as much of the upbeat as we possibly can. So I'll end with this, if you don't mind. Again, thank you so much for coming out tonight and supporting the great new art centre, and congratulations on your 25 years. Gathering mushrooms. The rain comes flapping through the yard like a tablecloth that she hand embroidered. My mother has left it on the line. It is sodden with rain. The mushroom shed is windowless, wide, its high stacked wooden trays hosed down with formaldehyde. And my father has opened the gates of Troy to that first load of horse manure, barley straw, gypsum, dried blood, ammonia. Wagon after wagon blusters in. A self-renewing gold-black dragon we push to the back of the mind. All brought back to me that September evening 15 years on. The pair of us tripping through Barnett's fair domain like girls in long dresses after a hailstorm. We might have been thinking of the firebomb that sent Malone House sky high, and its priceless collection of linen sky high. We might have wept with Elizabeth Macron. We were thinking only of psilocybin. You sang of the maid you met on the dewy grass, and she stooped so low, gave me to know it was mushrooms she was gathering. Oh. He'll be wearing that same old donkey jacket and sawn-off waders. He carries a knife, 2 punnets, a bucket. He reaches far into his own shadow. We'll have taken him unawares and stand behind him, slightly to one side. He is one of those ancient warriors before the rising tide. He'll glance back from under his peaked cap without breaking rhythm. his coaxing a mushroom, a flat or a cup, the nick against his right thumb, the bucket then, the punnet to left or right, and so on, and so forth, till kingdom come. We followed the overgrown towpath by the lagan. The sunset would deepen through cinnamon to aubergine. The wood pigeon's concerto for oboe and strings, allegro, blowing your mind. And you were suddenly out of my ken, hurtling towards the ever receding ground, into the maw of a shimmering green gold dragon. You discovered yourself in some outbuilding with your long lost companion, me. Though my head had grown into the head of a horse that shook its dirty fair mane and spoke this verse. Come back to us. However cold and raw, your feet were always meant to negotiate terms with bare cement. Beyond this concrete wall is a wall of concrete and barbed wire. Your only hope is to come back. If sing you must, let your song tell of treading your own dung. Let straw and dung give a spring to your step. If we never live to see the day we leap into our true domain, lie down with us now and wrap yourself in the soiled grey blanket of Irish rain that will one day bleach itself white. Lie down with us and wait.
Let's give him another round of applause, right? Trish? Is Kathy here? Where's Kathy? Didn't make it. Oh, there she is. So I have to say, and I'm sorry that I was running a little late, but one, thank you, right? Thank you for coming to Fanwood to really celebrate our 25th anniversary. I mean, I don't think you can underscore that not many communities can boast of the types of poetry that we've had listened to, written, spoken in these walls. You know, so you were in one of our oldest buildings here in town that used to actually be the carriage house for the horses that were here on the property. Yeah, but it used to be a hotel. But 25 years with Adele and Tom, give it up. No easy feat, and coming out of COVID and wanting to get people back here together for the for the love of poetry and the written word and the creativity as an English major, you know, and Irish descent too, right? Like I could just close my eyes and be completely entertained. So we want to thank you. We want to thank all of you for coming out tonight and helping us celebrate 25 years of really appreciating culture, right, and the written word and poetry and creativity. So thank you.
Thank you very much.
And our friend Bob Fiorino is now popping the corks on the Prosecco.
Yay!
And all kinds of candy and cookies, rather, and treats. Thank you, Kat Doty. I'm going to leave somebody else. Nancy Lubarski, the Ramos family, and who else brought? I'm forgetting. Oh, Bob. Bob made brownies and Italian cookies. So we're all ready to go. So please go help yourselves. And please take one of the little booklets with Father Alex's poems in it. I know he would be so thrilled for you to see those. And one more time for Paul Muldoon. Spent an evening in the presence of greatness. And for once, I don't mean me.
Please